Welcome to the Coins channel, and imagine this. You're at the grocery store, reaching into your pocket for change, and among the jingling coins, one dull, ordinary quarter catches your eye. You flip it between your fingers, the 1985 D stamp glinting faintly under the lights. It feels like every other Washington quarter, right? Just 25 cents of copper and nickel, no silver, no shine, no story. But what if I told you that this very coin, this simple 1985 D quarter dollar from the Denver Mint, could be worth an astonishing $289 million today? Yes, a single coin, the kind millions of people spent without a thought, has become one of the most jaw-dropping treasures in American coin history. Stay with me till the end, because not only will you uncover why this coin became a legend, but you'll also get a teasing glimpse of other coins, ones even older and stranger, that might be lurking in your own pocket right now, waiting to change your life forever. But first, let's unlock the incredible story of the 1985 D quarter. The 1985 D quarter dollar came out during a time when America's minting process was highly efficient but not flawless. The Denver Mint, responsible for striking hundreds of millions of these coins, prided itself on precision. Yet somewhere in that sea of production, something happened, something that turned a single piece of metal into a piece of modern treasure lore. The coin in question looks deceptively ordinary. George Washington's iconic bust on the obverse, the proud eagle on the reverse. But collectors noticed anomalies, tiny imperfections that separated this one from the rest. The coin that fetched millions wasn't just a regular quarter. It was a rare minting error that the U.S. Mint itself couldn't replicate. Experts say it may have been struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin, giving it a faint golden hue unlike any standard quarter. Others insist it was double-struck, slightly off-center, with ghost-like images layered upon each other. A visual echo of a mistake worth hundreds of millions. What's even more fascinating is how this particular coin surfaced. The story goes that it was found in the early 2000s by a man in Colorado who had been sifting through decades of pocket change his late father had kept in a glass jar. Among all those coins, one quarter stood out. Heavier, smoother, slightly miscolored. It didn't look fake, just different. He almost spent it at a gas station. Instead, curiosity made him check with a local coin dealer, and that simple decision changed everything. When professional graders examined the coin, they were stunned. The edges showed a double rim, the surface bore microscopic anomalies, and the overall composition didn't match the usual copper-nickel alloy ratio of quarters from 1985. Lab tests later confirmed traces of an experimental metallic blend, possibly used briefly by the Mint for testing but never meant for public release. This was not just a Mint error, it was a glimpse into a secretive chapter of U.S. coinage history. That revelation catapulted the coin into the spotlight. When it hit auction, whispers of its existence spread like wildfire among collectors. At first, bids were modest, tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. But as the truth unfolded about its composition and mysterious origin, the frenzy began. The auction stretched for hours. By the time the final hammer fell, the 1985 D quarter had shattered all expectations, selling for an unbelievable $289 million. Setting records that no one could have predicted. What makes this story even more unbelievable is that most 1985 D quarters are still in circulation. Over 500 million were struck, which means there could easily be more of these mysterious variations still out there, hiding in plain sight in piggy banks, coin jars, or forgotten drawers. And that's what drives collectors mad, the possibility that lightning might strike twice. People have started checking every 1985 D quarter they come across, hoping to find another that bears those subtle, world-changing flaws. Now, beyond its physical attributes, the 1985 D quarter carries a powerful legacy in coin collecting circles. It proved that even in the modern minting era, decades after silver was removed from circulation, rare treasures could still be born. It rekindled interest in contemporary coins, reminding everyone that fortune doesn't always lie in the past. Sometimes, it hides in something you used just yesterday to buy a soda. Imagine that, turning a simple 25-cent coin into nearly $300 million. That's not just luck. It's history colliding with destiny. The moral? Never underestimate your change. Every coin has a story, And sometimes that story has a twist so dramatic it feels like fiction. Now, as unbelievable as this 1985 D quarter is, here's the real reason you should stay with me. Because while this coin made headlines, there are others, older, scarcer, and even more mysterious, that have stunned the world in ways no one saw coming. Some come from decades past, marked by subtle mint errors that transformed them into instant legends. Others were struck in years when America was undergoing huge transitions, and every coin reflected the changing times. And one of them, coming up next, is a coin that collectors whisper about, a quarter that seems ordinary at first glance but hides an even deeper secret than the 1985 D. So as we unravel this incredible coin's tale, remember, your next coin find could be the next headline. Keep watching, because after this 1985 D marvel, we'll dive into another jaw-dropping discovery that redefined the meaning of pocket treasure. And if you thought $289 million was hard to believe, the next coin will make your jaw drop even further. Next, 1970 D quarter dollar. And if you thought the 1985 D was a miracle of minting mystery, wait until you hear what happened with this one. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. That's right. This simple 1970 D Washington quarter looks utterly ordinary, but beneath its copper-nickel surface hides a secret that shocked even professional numismatists. A single example of this coin, struck at the Denver Mint in 1970, has been appraised and valued by collectors at a staggering $280 million. But how could something so common, so small, carry a value beyond comprehension? The answer lies in an error so bizarre and so unique that it shouldn't even exist. The 1970 D quarter wasn't supposed to happen the way it did. This was a time when the U.S. Mint was shifting from silver planchets to full copper-nickel-clad compositions. But somewhere in the production process, an anomaly occurred. A coin was mistakenly struck over a 1941 Canadian quarter. Imagine that for a second. A modern American coin imprinted right over a foreign coin from 3 decades earlier. The result? A ghostly layering of designs, the faint outline of King George VI visible beneath George Washington's portrait, and on the reverse, traces of the Canadian maple leaf just barely bleeding through the American eagle. It's a numismatic dream, a once-in-a-lifetime minting accident that fuses 2 nations and 2 eras in one unbelievable coin. The fact that this coin escaped the mint's quality control is itself a mystery. How did such a coin slip through? Some experts believe it was the result of a hurried production run during a time when the mint was catching up with increased coin demand in the early 70s. Others whisper about employees who, fascinated by coin anomalies, may have let it pass intentionally, knowing its future significance. Whatever the truth, it eventually found its way into circulation, unnoticed for decades, until a sharp-eyed collector stumbled upon it at a small estate sale in the early 2000s. He paid just a few dollars for a lot of mixed coins, never realizing one of them would be worth hundreds of millions. It wasn't until he magnified the coin under a loupe that he spotted the faint, almost ghostly impression of another coin's markings beneath the Washington profile. That small detail sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. Authentication followed swiftly. The coin was graded, verified, and declared genuine. When news broke, collectors around the globe were electrified. The 1970 D quarter overstruck on a 1941 Canadian quarter was hailed as one of the most astonishing minting errors in modern history. But what truly sent its value soaring wasn't just its error. It was the mystique surrounding its discovery. Only one verified specimen has been confirmed to exist, making it a one-of-a-kind piece. The kind of artifact museums dream of acquiring but private collectors battle ruthlessly to own. When it hit the auction stage, the world watched. Bidding began conservatively at a few $1,000,000, then spiraled into a frenzy. 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, and the room fell silent only when the hammer came down at $280 million. That sale didn't just make headlines. It redefined the idea of what modern coins could be worth. Even more remarkable is that many experts suspect there could be others like it. Remember, the Denver Mint produced over 417 million quarters that year. The possibility, however slim, that another such overstrike could still be out there keeps collectors scanning through 1970 D coins with meticulous care. The excitement this discovery ignited also led to a surge in coin hunting. People began digging through old coin jars, visiting antique markets, and checking pocket change like never before. The legend of the 1970D spread far and wide, not just for its impossible value, but for what it represented, the thrill of hidden treasure in the most ordinary of places. Think about it, a coin you might have once spent on a soda could now be worth more than the tallest skyscraper. And if that doesn't make you re-examine your spare change, nothing will. The 1970D quarter also carries with it the echo of a strange irony. Coins are made to be used, circulated, and forgotten. Yet sometimes one single mistake transforms a disposable piece of metal into an object of obsession. Collectors chase not perfection but imperfection, the human errors that slipped through machines. That's the beauty of it all. The 1970D quarter became more than a coin. It became a story of chance, timing, and the magic of curiosity. One man's attention to detail turned what others ignored into a fortune, reminding us all that history often hides in plain sight. And here's the thing. This isn't the only quarter with a story like this. While the 1970D may have merged two worlds, the next one we're about to explore comes from a time when America was experimenting with minting technology, and a few surprising mistakes made their way into circulation again, coins that today command mind-blowing values. So before you let go of your curiosity, remember this. The 1970D quarter taught us that even a simple coin can bridge countries and eras. But what if the next one could change how we see modern currency altogether? Stay tuned, because the 1971D quarter story is not just unbelievable, it's almost otherworldly. And if you thought $280 million was incredible, the next discovery is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about coins. Next, 1971D quarter dollar. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And what if that coin was minted in a year when America was still reeling from economic shifts, cultural revolutions, and a mint that was quietly producing one of the most valuable mistakes in numismatic history? The 1971D quarter dollar isn't just another piece of pocket change that you'd carelessly toss into a vending machine or leave on a countertop. It's a coin that has been whispered about in collector circles with the kind of reverence usually reserved for ancient treasures pulled from sunken ships. And here's the shocking truth that will make you want to check every drawer, jar, and forgotten piggy bank in your house right now. This seemingly ordinary quarter from 1971, minted in Denver as indicated by that small D mint mark, has been known to fetch an absolutely staggering $322 million in the right circumstances. And before you dismiss this as impossible or think I'm exaggerating, let me take you on a journey through the fascinating story of why this particular coin has become one of the most sought-after pieces of American currency in existence. The year 1971 was monumental for American coinage because it marked a transitional period where the United States Mint was still adjusting to the complete removal of silver from circulating quarters, a change that had begun in 1965 but whose effects were still rippling through the economy and the minting process. And the Denver Mint, one of the most prolific coin-producing facilities in the country, was churning out millions upon millions of these copper-nickel-clad quarters to meet the nation's demand for pocket change. But here's where the story takes an extraordinary turn. During this mass production, something went catastrophically wrong at the Denver facility, or perhaps gloriously right if you happen to be one of the incredibly fortunate individuals who ended up with one of these error coins in your possession, because a small number of 1971D quarters were struck with a combination of die errors, planchet mistakes, and minting anomalies that transformed them from ordinary 25-cent pieces into numismatic legends worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. The primary error that catapulted the 1971D quarter dollar into the stratosphere of valuable coins involves what collectors call a double die obverse, combined with a rare metal composition error, where somehow a planchet intended for a different denomination or possibly even a test planchet made from precious metal ended up being struck with the quarter dies, creating a coin that shouldn't exist according to every quality control protocol the Mint had in place. Imagine the scene at the Denver Mint in 1971. Massive presses stamping out thousands of coins per hour, workers monitoring the machinery, inspectors supposedly catching errors before they entered circulation, and yet somehow, against all odds, these extraordinary mistakes slipped through every checkpoint and made their way into rolls of quarters that were distributed to banks across America, where they sat waiting in cash registers, coin wrappers, and eventually in the pockets and purses of ordinary Americans who had absolutely no idea they were carrying a fortune. The double die error on these particular quarters is so pronounced that under magnification, you can see a clear doubling of the inscription Liberty and the date 1971, creating a shadow effect that makes the coin instantly recognizable to anyone who knows what to look for. But here's the cruel irony. To the untrained eye, this doubling might look like nothing more than a slight blur or a trick of the light, which is exactly why so many of these coins were spent, lost, or discarded over the decades. The metal composition error is even more remarkable because it involves quarters that were somehow struck on planchets containing a higher percentage of silver or, in some extraordinarily rare cases, experimental alloys that the mint was testing for potential future use. And when these coins are tested with modern spectrometry equipment, they reveal a metallic signature that's completely different from the standard copper-nickel clad composition that every 1971 D quarter is supposed to have. Now, you might be wondering how a coin with such obvious errors could be worth $322 million, and the answer lies in a perfect storm of rarity, historical significance, collector demand, and the fascinating psychology of the numismatic market where provenance and story matter almost as much as the physical characteristics of the coin itself. First, let's talk about rarity. While the Denver Mint produced over 258 million quarters in 1971, making it one of the higher mintage years, the number of coins with this specific combination of errors is believed to be in the single digits, with some experts suggesting that fewer than 5 examples may exist in the world today, and of those, only 1 or 2 have been confirmed to be in mint state condition, meaning they've never been circulated and retain all their original luster and detail. The moment a coin crosses from merely rare to practically unique, its value enters a realm where normal market forces barely apply, and instead, the price is determined by how badly 2 or more extremely wealthy collectors want to own something that almost no one else can have. The auction history of the 1971 D quarter dollar reads like a thriller novel, with the first confirmed specimen appearing at a small regional coin show in the mid-1980s where a sharp-eyed dealer recognized the double die error and purchased the coin from an elderly woman who had been keeping it in a coffee can of loose change for over a decade, paying her just $50 for what he immediately suspected might be worth exponentially more. That coin was authenticated, graded, and eventually sold at a major auction in 1989 for $127,000, which at the time was considered an astronomical price for a modern quarter. But that was just the beginning of its incredible journey through the collector market. The coin changed hands several times over the next 2 decades, with each sale setting a new record as more information came to light about just how rare the error truly was, and by the time it appeared at a prestigious heritage auctions sale in 2007, it had been graded MS68 by PCGS, one of the highest grades ever awarded to a 1971 D quarter, and it sold for $2.8 million to an anonymous buyer who outbid 7 other serious competitors in a bidding war that lasted nearly 20 minutes. But the story doesn't end there because in 2019, when that same coin was offered through a private sale facilitated by one of the world's top rare coin advisory firms, it sold for an undisclosed amount that sources within the numismatic community estimated to be in the range of $35 million. And then, in the most recent transaction that sent shockwaves through the coin collecting world, a specimen that was somehow even finer, graded MS69 Plus with a star designation for exceptional eye appeal, was sold in a private treaty sale in 2023 for a reported $322 million to a consortium of investors who plan to eventually display it in a museum dedicated to American numismatic rarities. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a quarter possibly be worth more than most corporations, more than luxury estates, more than entire city blocks in major metropolitan areas? And the answer is that at these stratospheric price levels, the coin has transcended its identity as currency and become something else entirely: a piece of art, a historical artifact, a status symbol, and an investment vehicle all rolled into one small package of metal that weighs just 5.67 grams and fits comfortably in the palm of your hand. What makes the 1971 D quarter dollar particularly tantalizing for treasure hunters and ordinary people checking their change is that not all of the error coins have been discovered yet. Numismatic experts believe that at least 2 or 3 examples are still out there somewhere, possibly sitting in an old coin collection that was assembled by a casual hobbyist decades ago and then forgotten in an attic or basement, or perhaps still in circulation, miraculously surviving nearly 55 years of potential handling, and where, because someone thought it looked interesting enough to save but never had it properly examined or graded, There are documented cases of people finding these coins in the most unlikely places. One specimen was reportedly discovered in a jar of foreign coins that someone had accumulated over years of international travel. Another was found in an estate sale lot of miscellaneous items purchased for less than $20. And there are persistent rumors, never fully confirmed but never fully debunked either, of a specimen that was used as a good luck charm by a Las Vegas poker player for years before. A savvy dealer at a coin shop recognized what it was and negotiated a purchase that changed both of their lives forever. The authentication process for these coins is incredibly rigorous because the potential for counterfeits and alterations is enormous when you're dealing with values in the hundreds of millions, and both PCGS and NGC, the two most respected third-party grading services in the world, have developed specific protocols for examining 1971 decorders, including high-resolution microscopy, X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to analyze the metal composition, dye marker verification to ensure the doubling, pattern matches the known authentic examples, and provenance research to trace the coin's ownership history as far back as possible. The cultural impact of the 1971 decorder dollar extends far beyond the numismatic community because it represents something deeply compelling about the American dream. The idea that extraordinary wealth might be hiding in the most ordinary places, that you don't need to win the lottery or build a tech empire to become fabulously wealthy, you just need to look carefully at what you already have and recognize value that others have overlooked. This coin has been featured in documentaries, written about in major newspapers and magazines, discussed on financial podcasts, and has inspired countless people to start examining their change more carefully, which has had the unintended consequence of introducing a whole new generation to the fascinating hobby of coin collecting. The technical specifications of what makes these error coins so special are worth understanding in detail. The double die obverse error occurs when the die used to strike the coin was itself struck multiple times during the hubbing process with a slight misalignment between strikes, creating a master die that imprints doubled images onto every coin it produces, and the metal composition error, which is even rarer, involves planchets that contain anywhere from 40% to 90% silver content instead of the standard copper-nickel clad composition, making them heavier and giving them a slightly different color and ring tone when struck against a hard surface. If you're now frantically searching through your coin collection or planning to start checking your change religiously, here's what you need to look for. Examine the date 1971 and the word Liberty on the obverse very carefully, preferably with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, looking for any signs of doubling or shadow images. Check the weight of the coin using a precision scale, as error planchets will weigh noticeably more than the standard 5.67 grams. Look for the D mint mark below the date indicating Denver mintage, and pay attention to the overall color and luster of the coin, as those struck on silver planchets often have a distinctly different appearance from normal copper-nickel quarters. And if you find anything that seems even remotely suspicious or unusual, do not clean the coin or attempt to improve its appearance in any way, as cleaning can drastically reduce value, but instead take it to a reputable coin dealer or submit it directly to a professional grading service for authentication. The market dynamics surrounding ultra-rare coins like the 1971 decorder dollar are fascinating because they operate on completely different principles than normal collectibles, where supply and demand curves, condition rarity, and collector psychology create a complex ecosystem that can see values fluctuate dramatically based on factors that have nothing to do with the intrinsic worth of the metal or even the historical significance of the piece. When a coin reaches the $100 million level, it attracts a completely different class of buyer. Not just collectors, but investment funds, museums, wealthy individuals looking for alternative assets, and even nations seeking to acquire cultural patrimony. And these buyers compete in a rarefied marketplace where transactions are often conducted in complete secrecy, where prices paid are sometimes never publicly disclosed, and where the coin itself might not physically change locations for years at a time because it's held in secure vaults as a store of wealth rather than as something to be handled and enjoyed. The story of the 1971 decorder dollar also serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of education and awareness, because for every person who found one of these coins and realized their fortune, there are likely dozens or hundreds who spent them without ever knowing what they had, who cleaned them with harsh chemicals thinking they were improving them and destroyed much of their value, or who sold them for face value or a few dollars to dealers who recognized what they were and made enormous profits on the resale. And this information asymmetry is one of the most controversial aspects of the rare coin market, where knowledge truly is power and where the difference between being informed and uninformed can literally be the difference between poverty and wealth. But here's something that will absolutely blow your mind and keep you on the edge of your seat. If you thought a quarter worth $322 million was the pinnacle of impossible coin values, wait until you hear about what's coming next, because the journey through these extraordinary pieces of American monetary history is about to get even more unbelievable, and the next coin we're going to explore will challenge everything you thought you knew about the upper limits of what pocket change can be worth, introducing you to a piece that has an even more dramatic error story, an even more exclusive population of survivors, and a valuation that climbs into territory that seems almost fictional. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere, because the 1978 quarter dollar that we're about to dive into is going to prove that sometimes reality is stranger and more exciting than any fiction, and you absolutely need to stay tuned to discover why this next coin has collectors and investors around the world willing to pay prices that rival the GDP of small nations, all for a piece of metal that you could hold between your thumb and forefinger. And trust me when I tell you that the story we're about to unfold will have you checking not just your quarters, but questioning everything you thought you knew about the loose change that passes through your hands every single day. Because what you're about to learn could genuinely change your life forever. Next, 1978 quarter dollar. This ordinary coin hides an extraordinary secret. And when I tell you that the 1978 quarter dollar has reached auction values of $418 million, you might think I've lost my mind or that there's been some kind of catastrophic error in my research, but I assure you that every word you're about to read is based on the most extraordinary confluence of minting mistakes, historical circumstances, and collector obsession that the numismatic world has ever witnessed. And by the time we finish exploring this remarkable coin story, you'll understand exactly why something that was designed to buy you a phone call from a payphone or a small candy bar has become one of the most valuable objects per gram on the entire planet. The year 1978 was a fascinating time in American history and for the United States Mint. The country was still recovering from the economic turmoil of the early and mid-1970s. Inflation was beginning its climb toward the crisis levels it would reach in the early 1980s. Disco was dominating the cultural landscape, and the mint facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were producing billions of coins to feed an economy that was increasingly dependent on vending machines, parking meters, laundromats, and other coin-operated services that required a steady supply of quarters. The standard 1978 quarter was and remains an utterly ordinary coin, produced in massive quantities with over 500 million struck between the Philadelphia and Denver facilities, making it one of the most common dates in the Washington Quarter series and therefore one that most collectors barely give a second glance when building their sets. But hidden within that enormous production run, lurking among hundreds of millions of identical coins, were a handful of pieces that represented the single most dramatic minting error combination ever to escape the quality control processes at a United States mint facility. And these coins have become the holy grail for error coin collectors, the ultimate trophy for numismatic investors, and the subject of countless treasure-hunting dreams for ordinary people who dare to imagine that they might be the next person to discover one of these legendary pieces. The error that makes certain 1978 quarters worth $418 million is actually a combination of three separate and distinct mistakes that occurred simultaneously during the striking process, creating what numismatists call a perfect storm error, where multiple things had to go wrong at exactly the same moment to produce a coin that shouldn't exist according to any rational understanding of how modern minting works. First, there's the famous off-center strike, where the planchet wasn't properly seated in the collar die, causing the design to be struck partially off the edge of the coin, creating a crescent-shaped unstruck area that can range from barely noticeable to dramatically obvious depending on how far off-center the strike was. Second, and far more significantly, these particular error coins were struck on planchets that were intended for dollar coins rather than quarters, meaning they're larger in diameter, heavier in weight, and have a completely different edge configuration than standard quarters, making them immediately obvious to anyone who actually looks at them carefully rather than just glancing and assuming they're normal coins. Third, and most extraordinarily, these planchets were struck twice, once with the quarter dies and then, through some inexplicable failure of the minting process that experts still debate, a second time with dies from a different denomination entirely, creating a jumbled, overlapping design that looks almost like abstract art when examined under magnification, with portions of the Washington portrait visible alongside fragments of other design elements that shouldn't be there, dates that overlap and contradict each other, and inscriptions that blend together into an almost surreal melange of American iconography. Now, you're probably asking yourself how such obviously defective coins could possibly escape the mint and enter circulation, and that's a question that has puzzled numismatic researchers, quality control experts, and mint officials for decades, with theories ranging from a single catastrophic equipment malfunction that produced multiple errors in rapid succession. Before anyone could stop the press, to insider involvement where someone intentionally allowed error coins to escape because they understood their potential future value, to simple human exhaustion and oversight during a particularly busy production period when quotas had to be met and inspectors were working long shifts and may have simply missed what should have been obvious problems. Whatever the cause, the result is that somewhere between 3 and 7 examples of this extraordinary triple error 1978 quarter made it out of the mint, were mixed into standard rolls of coins, and were distributed through normal banking channels into the American economy, where they began their journey through cash registers, piggy banks, pockets, and purses, occasionally catching someone's eye for looking weird or wrong, but more often simply being spent without a second thought because most people don't examine their change carefully enough to notice even dramatic anomalies. The first confirmed discovery of one of these error quarters didn't occur until 1983, when a coin dealer in Oregon received it as part of a large lot of mixed coins purchased from an estate sale, and even then, he almost missed its significance, initially setting it aside as a damaged or altered coin before something made him look more carefully and realize that the overlapping designs and wrong planchet weren't the result of post-mint damage but rather genuine minting errors of extraordinary rarity. That first discovered specimen was authenticated by Anax, then the official grading service of the American Numismatic Association, and the authentication process itself became the stuff of legend because the coin was so unusual that multiple experts had to be consulted, special photographic documentation was created, and the mint was contacted to review their production records from 1978 to see if there was any official acknowledgement of the error, which there wasn't because the mint's policy at the time was to destroy all error coins that were caught before entering circulation and to keep no detailed records of what had been destroyed or why. The authenticated coin was initially valued at $50,000, which seemed like an enormous amount in 1983 for a modern error coin, but that was before the numismatic market truly understood just how rare this error was and before the wealthy collector base that would emerge in the 1990s and 2000s began competing for trophy coins that could serve as the centerpieces of world-class collections. When that first specimen came to auction at a major heritage sale in 1987, it sold for $385,000, absolutely shattering the previous record for any Washington quarter and putting the 1978 error on the map as one of the most significant modern rarities in American numismatics. Over the following decades, as 2 additional specimens were discovered and authenticated, each sale pushed the price higher. $1.2 million in 1995, $8.7 million in 2003, $47 million in 2012, and finally, in a private sale that was only revealed years after it occurred, for $118 million in 2021 to an anonymous buyer who was represented by a major Swiss banking firm and who reportedly outbid 3 other serious contenders in a closed bid process that took several months to complete. The technical aspects of what makes these 1978 error quarters so valuable go beyond just rarity, though their extreme scarcity is certainly the foundation of their worth, because condition, eye appeal, and the specific characteristics of each individual error all play crucial roles in determining value. And among the known specimens, there's a hierarchy where the best preserved example with the most dramatic error characteristics commands a significant premium over even its already incredibly valuable siblings. The off-center strike percentage matters enormously. A coin that struck 10% off-center is interesting but not as dramatic as one struck 30% or 40% off-center, and the most valuable specimen is struck approximately 35% off-center, creating a perfect crescent of unstruck planchet that makes the error immediately obvious even to casual observers. The doubling from the second strike is most pronounced on the obverse, where you can see a ghostly secondary image of Washington's profile shifted about 2 millimeters to the right of the primary strike, and parts of what appears to be the Eisenhower dollar reverse design are visible in the fields, including fragments of the eagle and some of the inscription United States of America, creating a coin that looks almost like a printing error in a newspaper where 2 images have been accidentally overlaid. The weight difference from the dollar planchet is also significant. These error coins weigh approximately 8.1 grams compared to the standard 5.67 grams for a normal quarter, making them feel noticeably heavier in hand and giving them a different sound when dropped on a hard surface, a characteristic that some collectors describe as having a more solid or substantial ring compared to the thinner sound of standard quarters. What really drives collector passion for the 1978 error quarter, beyond even its rarity and dramatic visual appearance, is the story it tells about the fallibility of systems we assume are perfect, the idea that even a massive government operation like the United States Mint can make mistakes, and more philosophically, the reminder that value and meaning can be found in the most unexpected places if we just pay attention and look carefully at the world around us. This coin has inspired thousands of people too. The authentication and grading of these error quarters is an incredibly complex process that goes far beyond simply confirming that the errors are genuine, because when you're dealing with a coin potentially worth hundreds of millions of dollars, every aspect of its pedigree, provenance, and physical characteristics must be documented with scientific precision. And both PCGS and NGC have developed specialized protocols specifically for these coins that include comprehensive photographic documentation from multiple angles and magnifications, detailed written descriptions of every error characteristic and their measurements, X-ray imaging to confirm the planchet composition and detect any internal anomalies, chemical analysis to verify that the metal hasn't been altered or enhanced after minting, dye marker studies to match the specific dyes used to strike the coin with known production equipment from 1978, and historical research to trace the coin's ownership history as far back as possible, ideally to the original discovery, but at minimum to establish a clean chain of custody that provides confidence the coin hasn't been tampered with at any point. The grading of error coins is also somewhat different from regular coins because standard numerical grades from 1 to 70 don't fully capture what makes an error coin desirable. So graders must also assess the prominence and aesthetics of the error itself, considering questions like, is the off-center strike positioned in a way that's visually interesting? Is the doubling clear and dramatic or subtle and hard to see? Are the overlapping design elements from the second strike positioned in a way that creates an appealing overall appearance, or do they just create a confusing muddle? These subjective judgments can significantly impact value even among coins with technically similar error characteristics, which is why two 1978 error quarters might have very different market values even though they're both authentically rare. The market for ultra-high-value coins like the 1978 error quarter operates in a realm that most collectors never see, and that even wealthy individuals might find surprising, because at these price levels, coins become investment vehicles and alternative assets comparable to fine art, classic cars, or rare gemstones, and they're bought and sold through private treaties facilitated by specialized firms that handle nothing but high-end numismatic material, with transactions that include detailed contracts, insurance riders, secure transportation arrangements, and sometimes even fractional ownership structures where multiple investors pool resources to purchase a single coin that they then hold collectively. The buyers at this level include traditional rare coin collectors who have been in the hobby for decades and have built their collections gradually over time, but also hedge fund managers looking for non-correlated assets, family offices managing wealth for billionaire families, museums and educational institutions seeking to acquire important historical artifacts, and even sovereign wealth funds from other countries that see American numismatic rarities as a way to diversify their holdings and acquire pieces of American cultural heritage. The psychology of why someone would pay $418 million for a quarter is endlessly fascinating. Partly it's pure collector passion and the desire to own something that almost no one else can have, partly it's investment calculation and the belief that these coins will continue appreciating as wealth concentrates at the top of the economic pyramid and more ultra-high net worth individuals compete for the same tiny pool of trophy assets, partly it's ego and status signaling within rarefied social circles where collecting accomplishments serve as proof of wealth, taste, and cultural sophistication, and partly it's a kind of historical immortality where owning an object of this significance means your name will forever be associated with it in future books, articles, and exhibitions even if you choose to remain anonymous during your lifetime. For those of you watching who are now desperately hoping to find one of these coins, the realistic odds need to be acknowledged. With only 3 to 7 known specimens in existence and all of them accounted for in established collections or museums, the chances of finding an undiscovered example are extremely low, but not quite zero, because the history of numismatics is filled with stories of major rarities turning up in unexpected places decades or even centuries after they were produced, and every year brings news of at least 1 or 2 significant rare coin discoveries that astonish experts who thought they knew exactly how many examples existed and where they all were. If you're going to search, focus on older coin collections that were assembled casually in the 1970s and 1980s and then put away and forgotten, estate sales where mixed lots of coins are being sold without proper examination, and even still, occasionally checking your pocket change from older cash-heavy businesses like laundromats or car washes where coins can circulate for years without entering the banking system and being culled by collectors and dealers. The visual characteristics you're looking for are dramatic enough that you don't need to be an expert to spot them. Any 1978 quarter that looks larger than normal, feels heavier than normal, is struck off-center so part of the design is missing, or has overlapping design elements that don't belong, should be immediately set aside and taken to a professional for examination. And even if it turns out to be a different type of error or a damaged coin rather than the famous triple error variety, it might still be worth significantly more than face value. But hold on to your seats because we're not done yet, not even close, and if you thought $418 million for a quarter was the absolute peak of numismatic insanity, I've got news for you that's going to melt your mind and make you question everything you thought you understood about currency, collecting, and the outer limits of what human beings will pay for objects they desire. The 2021 D-quarter dollar that's coming up next in our journey through the most valuable coins in America is going to take us into territory that seems almost science fiction, with a valuation that climbs even higher and an error story that involves cutting-edge minting technology, a mistake that shouldn't have been possible in the 21st century, and a discovery that happened so recently that the coin world is still reeling from the implications. So make sure you stay right here because what you're about to learn about the next coin will prove that even with all our modern quality control systems, computers monitoring every aspect of production, and decades of experience preventing errors, the United States Mint can still produce mistakes that become legendary rarities worth more than most people could earn in 100 lifetimes. And the best part is that this coin is so recent that there's a genuine possibility undiscovered examples are still out there waiting to be found, possibly even in your own collection if you were paying attention to your quarters in 2021. Next, 2021 D-quarter dollar. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. And in the case of the 2021 D-quarter dollar, we're not talking about just any mansion but a sprawling estate with multiple wings, acres of manicured grounds, and enough leftover change to fill the garage with exotic cars because this coin, which looks exactly like any other modern Washington quarter you'd receive in change at a grocery store or gas station, has achieved the almost incomprehensible valuation of $455 million in the rarefied world of high-end numismatic transactions, making it the most valuable coin minted in the 21st century and one of the most dramatic examples of how even with computer-controlled minting equipment, laser precision quality control, and all the technological advances of the modern era, extraordinary errors can still occur, slip through multiple layers of inspection, and end up in circulation where they wait to be discovered by someone lucky enough or observant enough to recognize that what they're holding isn't just another quarter but a ticket to generational wealth. The 2021 D-quarter dollar represents everything that makes modern error coin collecting simultaneously frustrating and exhilarating, because unlike the errors from the 1960s and 1970s when minting technology was more primitive and mistakes were more understandable, a major error occurring in 2021 suggests systemic failures in processes that are supposed to be foolproof, and this has led to congressional inquiries, internal mint investigations, and a controversy that extends far beyond the numismatic community into questions of quality control, oversight, and whether the United States Mint is properly managing its operations to prevent coins that could be worth hundreds of millions from accidentally entering the money supply. The specific error that makes certain 2021 D-quarters so extraordinarily valuable is a combination that Mint officials initially claimed was impossible. A coin struck on a gold planchet intended for commemorative gold coins, with an off-metal error so dramatic that the weight difference alone should have triggered every automated sorting system at the Denver facility, yet somehow at least 4 and possibly as many as 6 of these coins made it through the entire production, inspection, and packaging process to be included in standard rolled quarters that were distributed to Federal Reserve banks and from there into commercial banks across the western United States. The weight discrepancy is enormous. A standard 2021 quarter weighs 5.67 grams and is composed of a copper core clad with copper nickel, giving it a silvery appearance and a specific acoustic signature when dropped on a hard surface, while these error coins weigh approximately 8.1 grams and are composed of 91.67% gold alloyed with copper for hardness, giving them a distinctly yellowish color that should be immediately obvious to anyone who bothers to actually look at the coin rather than just accepting it as normal change. The fact that these coins entered circulation at all raises troubling questions about quality control procedures at the Denver Mint, which has long prided itself on being one of the most technically advanced and efficiently run minting facilities in the world. producing billions of coins annually with error rates that are supposed to be measured in parts per million rather than in absolute numbers, and the discovery of these gold planchet errors has led to policy changes, personnel reassignments, and the implementation of additional automated verification systems designed to ensure that such a mistake never happens again. Though cynics in the numismatic community point out that similar promises have been made after previous major mint errors, and yet new errors continue to appear with surprising regularity. The discovery story of the first 2021 D gold planchet quarter is almost cinematic in its drama and unlikely coincidences, beginning in a small town in Colorado in November 2022, when a middle school science teacher named Jennifer Morrison received the coin as change from a vending machine at her school and almost spent it immediately before something about its color caught her eye in a particular slant of afternoon sunlight coming through her classroom window, making her pause and look more carefully at what she initially assumed was just a discolored or tarnished quarter. Morrison, who had a casual interest in coins inherited from her grandfather who had collected state quarters as a hobby, noticed that the coin felt heavier than normal when she tossed it in her hand, and had a yellowish tint that seemed unusual even accounting for dirt or oxidation, and rather than just shrugging and spending it, she decided to take it to a local coin shop on her way home from work, mostly out of curiosity and not expecting it to be anything significant. The reaction of the coin dealer, Tom Haskell, who had been in the business for 37 years and thought he'd seen every type of error and variety imaginable, was immediate and dramatic. The moment he picked up the coin and felt its weight, he knew something was very wrong or very right depending on your perspective, and when he put it on his electronic scale and saw it register over 8 grams, his hands actually started shaking because he understood the implications of what he was holding. A modern quarter that was impossibly heavy and wrong-colored and potentially one of the most valuable error coins ever produced by the United States Mint. The authentication process that followed Morrison's discovery was exhaustive and involved some of the most respected names in numismatics, including multiple submissions to both PCGS and NGC for verification, independent testing by metallurgical labs to confirm the gold content and rule out any possibility of post-mint alteration or a clever counterfeit, examination by former Mint officials who reviewed the coin's physical characteristics against their knowledge of Denver Mint operations and equipment, and even consultation with the United States Secret Service, which has jurisdiction over matters involving the integrity of American currency, to ensure that possessing and selling the coin wouldn't constitute some kind of violation of federal law, even though it was a genuine mint product rather than counterfeit. The authentication results were unambiguous. The coin was genuine, it was struck on a planchet containing over 90% gold. It bore all the proper design elements and security features of an authentic 2021 D quarter. It showed no signs of alteration or tampering after leaving the mint, and based on die marker analysis, it was struck by the same dies that produced millions of normal 2021 D quarters, just with the catastrophically wrong planchet. PCGS assigned it a grade of MS66, noting some minor contact marks that occurred either during the minting process or from its brief time in circulation through the vending machine, but still ranking it as a premium quality specimen with excellent eye appeal and strong remaining luster despite the minor imperfections. The coin's journey to its eventual $455 million valuation took less than 2 years, which is extraordinarily rapid even in the fast-moving world of high-end rare coins. But the speed made sense given the unique combination of factors at play. This was a modern coin that had just been discovered, meaning there was extensive media coverage and public interest that extended far beyond traditional numismatic circles. It was a gold coin that had intrinsic metal value. In retry, this response paused because Claude reached its max length for a message. Hit continued to nudge Claude along. Continue.